On a cold morning, a lonely billionaire finds two abandoned babies and a mysterious ornate box. What seems like an act of compassion drags him into an international conspiracy involving a secret society that controls governments and corporations. Pursued by relentless enemies and betrayed by those he trusted, he discovers that the children are central to a secret that could change the world. With unlikely allies and his morality at stake, he will face choices that challenge his legacy and reveal that true power lies not in wealth, but in the decisions that shape the future. The fog enveloped New York like a thick blanket that June morning, turning the skyscrapers into blurred shadows against the gray sky. Edward Montgomery, at 45, watched the city awaken from the top of his penthouse on Fifth Avenue. His eyes, so accustomed to analyzing charts and spreadsheets, wandered aimlessly across the urban landscape while his mind was trapped in memories he would rather forget. The coffee on his marble table had gone cold, untouched, much like the financial reports his assistants had prepared the night before. As CEO of Montgomery Investments, one of the largest investment firms in the country, Edward rarely allowed himself moments of contemplation like this. But today was different. It had been exactly 3 years since Lillian, his wife, had passed away after a long battle with a serious illness. Mr. Montgomery, the voice of Rachel, his personal assistant, of over a decade, interrupted his thoughts. "Your meeting with the board is scheduled for 9 o'clock. Edward adjusted his custom-made Italian suit and glanced at his platinum watch. He still had time for his morning walk, a ritual he had religiously maintained since Lillian's passing. It was his moment of connection with the real world, away from the glass and steel walls of his corporate empire. "Cancel the meeting, Rachel. Reschedule it for tomorrow," he replied, grabbing his cashmere scarf. "I need to clear my head today." Rachel hesitated for a moment but nodded silently. After so many years, she knew when her boss needed space. Times Square, usually bustling at that hour of the morning, was eerily quiet under the fog. Edward walked, with his hands in the pockets of his overcoat, his footsteps echoing on the Portuguese cobblestones. It was then that an unusual sound cut through the silence, a soft, almost musical cry. Intrigued, Edward followed the sound to a bench partially hidden by bushes. There, shielded from the dampness by an improvised canopy, he found something that would change his life forever. Two babies, no more than a few weeks old, nestled in a wicker basket lined with fine fabrics. "My God," he murmured, approaching cautiously. The babies, a boy and a girl, were dressed in delicate clothes that hinted at a privileged origin, but it was the object beside the basket that immediately captured his attention, an ancient wooden box, richly carved with symbols that seemed to tell a story in a long-forgotten language. Edward reached for his phone, ready to call the authorities, when he noticed an envelope attached to the basket. With trembling fingers, he opened it and read the carefully handwritten message. "Protect them. Their lives are worth more than all the gold in the world. The box holds the key to their future and perhaps to humanity's. Trust no one." A shiver ran down his spine as he reread the message. Something about the urgent tone of the letter, combined with the inexplicable familiarity he felt when looking at the babies, led him to make an impulsive decision that defied his usually calculated nature. Removing his scarf, Edward used it to improvise extra protection against the cold for the babies. Carefully, he picked up the basket with one arm and the mysterious box with the other. His heart raced as he crossed the square, aware that each step took him further from the meticulously organized life he had built and closer to the unknown. "Rachel," he said into the phone as he hurried back to his penthouse, "I need you to come to my apartment immediately and bring Martha, your nurse sister. Don't mention this to anyone else." When he arrived home, Edward gently placed the basket on the Italian leather sofa and examined the babies more closely. They were clean, well-fed and surprisingly calm, as if they knew they were safe. The box, now under the bright light of the apartment, revealed even more intriguing details. Each symbol seemed to subtly change depending on the angle of observation. "What is happening here?" he murmured to himself, realizing that his life was about to change drastically. The sound of the doorbell startled him, announcing the arrival of Rachel and Martha. As he walked to open the door, Edward couldn't shake the feeling that the encounter with the babies hadn't been a mere coincidence. It was as if Lillian, in some way, had guided his steps to that park bench on that foggy morning. Rachel and Martha froze at the apartment door when they saw the babies. The silence was broken only by the soft snoring of the children, who slept peacefully, oblivious to the commotion their presence caused. "Mr. Montgomery," Rachel began, but the words failed her. In 15 years of working for Edward, she had never seen him make such an impulsive decision. Martha, with years of experience in neonatal nursing, immediately approached the children. "They seem to be in perfect condition," she declared after an initial examination. "Newborns, I'd say no more than 3 weeks old. And look at these clothes. They're of the highest quality." Edward recounted the circumstances of the encounter to the two women, showing them the mysterious letter, but choosing not to mention the ornate box which he had hidden in his office. Something about that object deeply intrigued him, and his instinct told him to keep it secret for now. "We need to notify the authorities," Rachel suggested, always practical. "No," Edward replied firmly, "at least not yet. There's something bigger going on here. I need time to understand what this is." Martha organized a list of essential items for the babies, and Rachel immediately set out to procure them. Meanwhile, Edward found himself alone with Martha and the children, watching them with a mix of fascination and apprehension. "The boy has an interesting birthmark," Martha commented, pointing to a small crescent-shaped mark on the baby's ankle. "And the girl, there's something familiar about her. She reminds me so much of—" "Lillian," Edward finished, feeling a lump in his throat. The resemblance was striking, the same almond-shaped eyes, the same delicate facial features. How is this possible? That afternoon, while Martha tended to the babies, Edward locked himself in his office with the mysterious box. Under the lamplight, the carvings seemed to come alive. Some symbols resembled Egyptian hieroglyphs, while others looked more like ancient Eastern characters. But there was something else, a repeating sequence that felt strangely familiar. His phone vibrated, breaking his concentration. It was a message from an unknown number. "The twins must be protected. The society already knows they are with you." Edward felt his blood run cold. How did anyone already know about the children? And what society was this? Before he could process these questions, another message arrived. "Seek out Helen Vanderbilt from the National Journal. She has the answers you're looking for." The name wasn't unfamiliar to him. Helen Vanderbilt was an investigative journalist known for her reports on corporate conspiracies and government secrets. Edward had always considered her an inconvenient sensationalist, but now Rachel returned with bags of diapers, clothes, and other essentials. As she organized everything in the guest room turned makeshift nursery, Edward noticed she seemed uneasy. "Is something wrong?" he asked. "Sir, when I was at the mall, I had the feeling I was being followed, and now, looking out the window, there's a black car parked in front of the building for hours." Edward discreetly approached the window. The car was there, with tinted windows and no identification. His survival instinct, sharpened by years in the corporate world, set off every alarm. "Rachel, call George from security. Tell him I want double the guards today." And no one, absolutely no one, comes up without my explicit authorization. That night, after Rachel and Martha left, not without first ensuring Edward knew how to prepare bottles and change diapers, he sat in the armchair between the two cribs, watching the babies sleep. The mysterious letter in one hand, his phone, with the cryptic messages in the other. His analytical mind tried to connect the dots: the babies, the box, the messages, the mysterious society, the journalist Helen Vanderbilt, and, looming over it all, the inexplicable resemblance of the girl to Lillian. It was as if the universe had conspired to place him at the center of something far greater than he could imagine. One of the babies stirred in their sleep, letting out a small sigh. Edward stood up and adjusted the blanket over him, surprised by the naturalness of the gesture. In less than 24 hours, these children had already awakened in him a protective instinct he didn't know he possessed. "I promise I'll keep them safe," he whispered, his voice barely audible in the dim light of the room. "Whatever is happening, we'll figure it out together." Looking out the bedroom window, Edward watched the lights of New York flicker like earthly stars. Somewhere out there, answers awaited him, and he was determined to find them, not just for his own peace of mind, but for the two little beings fate had placed under his protection. Helen Vanderbilt adjusted her glasses as she reread her notes at the cafe in the National Mall. At 35, she had already built a solid reputation as one of the most respected investigative journalists in the country. Her latest investigation into shadowy connections between major corporations and secret societies was about to reveal something far bigger than she had imagined. Her phone vibrated on the table. It was her anonymous source again. "The Billionaire has found the twins. It's time to make contact." Her heart raced. For months she had been following clues about a mysterious organization that called itself the Society, a group that seemingly controlled the world's power from behind the scenes. Her investigations had led her to discover the existence of an ancient artifact and two special children, but until now, it all seemed like mere conspiracy theory. Across the avenue, in the penthouse of the imposing building, Edward was trying to maintain his corporate routine while adapting his life to the presence of the babies. Rachel had hired two trusted nannies who took turns caring for the children, allowing him to keep up with his professional commitments. "Mr. Montgomery," Rachel entered his office with a concerned expression. "Helen Vanderbilt is in the reception area. She says she needs to speak with you urgently." Edward looked up from the documents he was reviewing. "I had been waiting for this moment since I received the mysterious message, but I hadn't imagined it would happen so quickly." "Have her come up," he replied, discreetly stashing the ornate box in a hidden compartment behind his bookshelf. Helen entered the office with the confident posture of someone accustomed to facing powerful people. Her sharp green eyes immediately scanned the room. "Mr. Montgomery," she began, "thank you for seeing me. I believe we have much to discuss about your new guests." Edward maintained a neutral expression. Years of negotiations had trained him well. "I'm not sure what you're referring to." "The twins," Helen said, lowering her voice, "and the box with ancient symbols you found with them. I'm here to help, Mr. Montgomery. Your life and the children's depend on it." For a long moment the two studied each other in silence. Finally, Helen Vanderbilt adjusted her prescription glasses as she reread her notes at the cafe in the National Mall. At 35, she had already built a solid reputation as one of the most respected investigative journalists in the country. Her latest investigation into shadowy connections between major corporations and secret societies was about to reveal something far bigger than she had imagined. Her phone vibrated on the table. It was her anonymous source again. "The Billionaire has found the twins. It's time to make contact." Her heart raced. For months she had been following leads about a mysterious organization that called itself the Society, a group that seemingly controlled the world's power behind the scenes. Her investigations had led her to discover the existence of an ancient artifact and two special children, but until now, it all seemed like mere conspiracy theory. Across the avenue, in the penthouse of the imposing building, Edward was trying to maintain his corporate routine while adapting his life to the presence of the babies. Rachel had hired two trusted nannies who took turns caring for the children, allowing him to keep up with his professional commitments. "Mr. Montgomery." Rachel entered his office with a concerned expression. "Helen Vanderbilt is in the reception. She says she needs to speak with you urgently." Edward looked up from the documents he was reviewing. He had been waiting for this moment since receiving the mysterious message, but he hadn't imagined it would happen so quickly. "Send her up," he replied, discreetly storing the ornate box in a hidden compartment behind his bookshelf. Helen entered the office with the confident posture of someone accustomed to facing powerful people. Her sharp green eyes immediately scanned the room. "Mr. Montgomery," she began, "thank you for seeing me. I believe we have much to discuss about your new guests." Edward maintained a neutral expression. Years of negotiations had trained him well. "I'm not sure what you're referring to." "The twins," Helen said, lowering her voice, "and the box with ancient symbols you found with them. I'm here to help, Mr. Montgomery. Your life and the children's depend on it." For a long moment the two studied each other in silence. Finally, Edward pressed a button under his desk, closing the electronic blinds and soundproofing the room. "How do you know about the children?" he asked, his voice now heavy with tension. Helen removed a flash drive from her bag. "Because I've been investigating the society for 2 years. They've been searching for these babies for weeks. They're special, Mr. Montgomery, more than you can imagine." Edward hesitated before pressing further. "Special how?" "The boy," Helen explained, "has an extremely rare genetic condition. His DNA contains a unique sequence that, according to my sources, is the key to something extraordinary. Something the society has been seeking for centuries." "And the girl?" Edward asked, thinking of her resemblance to Lillian. Helen took a deep breath. "The resemblance to your late wife is no coincidence, Mr. Montgomery. The girl, she is part of an ancient lineage, a lineage your wife also belonged to, though she likely never knew it." Edward felt the world spin. "What do you mean? Lillian never mentioned—" "Because she probably didn't know. The society has been manipulating genealogies for generations, keeping certain bloodlines under control. Your wife was one of them. And that girl, well, she carries the same special genetic code." A soft cry echoed through the nursery intercom. Edward instinctively stood up, his protective instinct overriding his suspicion. "I need to check on the children," he said. "I'll go with you," Helen replied quickly. "There's something I need to confirm." In the nursery, the nanny was trying to soothe the boy, who was crying persistently. Helen approached, her eyes fixed on the crescent-shaped birthmark on the baby's ankle. "It's him," she murmured. "The mark of the Guardian's lineage." "Guardians?" Edward questioned, picking up the baby with surprising ease. "An ancient order dedicated to protecting powerful secrets," Helen explained, watching as the baby instantly calmed in Edward's arms. "And it seems, Mr. Montgomery, you have been chosen to be one of them." At that moment, an alert sounded on Helen's phone. She paled as she read the message. "We need to get the children out of here now," she said urgently. "They've discovered where they are, and they're coming." The next few minutes were a whirlwind of action. Edward, maintaining a surprising calm, activated an emergency protocol he had established days earlier after the first mysterious messages. "Rachel," he called over the intercom, "Sapphire Protocol, now." His assistant, always efficient, sprang into action immediately. Within minutes, a van with bulletproof windows was waiting in the building's private garage, while Rachel coordinated a distraction at the main entrance. "Did you plan all this?" Helen asked, impressed, as she helped the nanny pack a bag with essential items for the babies. "Years in the corporate world taught me to always have a contingency plan," Edward replied, grabbing the ornate box from his hiding spot. "But I never imagined I'd use these skills to protect 2 babies." In the private elevator leading to the garage, Helen explained more about the situation. "The society isn't just any ordinary secret organization. They are the guardians of ancient knowledge, lost technologies, and secrets that could change the course of history. But over the centuries, they've become corrupted. Power has transformed them." "And what do they want with these children?" Edward asked, cradling the sleeping girl in his arms, while the nanny held the boy. "The twins are the result of generations of subtle genetic manipulation. The society has been monitoring certain family bloodlines for centuries, waiting for the moment when the perfect combination of genes would manifest. Your wife, Lillian, was part of this plan, even without knowing it." Edward felt a chill at the thought that Lillian had been manipulated without her knowledge. "And the box?" Helen looked at the object with reverence. "It's an ancient artifact, much older than it appears. They say it contains instructions to access unimaginable power, but it can only be opened by someone with the specific genetic code, like the boys." The van was waiting for them with the engine running. George, the head of security whom Edward trusted the most, was at the wheel. "Where to?" George asked, as soon as everyone got in. "My country house in Aspen," Edward replied. "No one except Rachel knows about it." As the van moved through the streets of New York, Helen continued her revelations. The boy's birthmark, the crescent moon, is a sign of the original guardians. They were chosen individuals tasked with protecting humanity's most important secrets. The society today is a corrupted version of that ancient order. "And the girl?" Edward asked. noticing how the baby clung to his finger even while asleep. "She carries a different kind of power," Helen explained. "Her lineage, which includes your wife Lillian, possesses a unique ability to perceive the truth. It's like a sixth sense that allows them to detect lies and see through illusions. The society fears this gift as much as they desire to control it." The van was traveling along Interstate 95 when Helen received another message on her phone. Her face paled once more. "We need to change our route," she said urgently. "They know about the country house. There's a trap waiting for us there." Edward exchanged a glance with George through the rearview mirror. "Where to, then?" "I know a place," Helen replied. "An old monastery in the mountains, maintained by people who have dedicated their lives to protecting those pursued by the evil. Society. It's our only chance." Edward looked at the babies sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger surrounding them. In just a few days, his life had completely changed. From a lonely billionaire focused solely on his business, he now found himself in the role of protector of two extraordinary children. "What did Lillian know about all this?" he asked softly, more to himself than to Helen. The journalist hesitated before answering. "I found something in my investigations, a letter. I think it's time for you to read it." With trembling hands, Helen pulled a yellowed envelope from her bag. In the center, in handwriting Edward would recognize anywhere, it read, "To Edward, when the twins arrive." The van wound its way along a mountain back road as Edward, hands trembling, opened the envelope. The paper carried the faint scent of the perfume Lillian always wore, as if it had been sealed just yesterday. In the dim light of the vehicle's interior, he began to read, "My beloved Edward, if you are reading this letter, it means the twins have finally reached you, and with them, the ancient box that holds secrets greater than we can imagine. I know you must be confused and frightened, but I need you to understand that all of this is part of something that began long before us. I always knew I was different. Since I was little, I had an inexplicable ability to sense when people were lying or hiding something. At first I thought it was just sharp intuition, but over time I realized it was more than that. It was a gift, a legacy from an ancient lineage that dates back to times history has forgotten. I discovered the truth about my family 6 months before I fell ill. A woman named Mother Sophia came to see me at the hospital where I volunteered. She told me about the society, about the original guardians, and about a prophecy that spoke of 2 children who would be born with the power to restore the lost balance. Edward, our meeting was no accident. You were chosen long before we met. Your kindness, your moral strength, your ability to lead, all these qualities were observed and deemed essential for what was to come. The illness that struck me was not natural. It was an attempt by the society to silence me when they discovered I knew too much. But they couldn't make me reveal the location of the sanctuary, the last refuge of the true guardians. The twins now with you are special in ways you will soon discover. The girl carries my lineage, the gift of seeing through illusions. The boy, he is the key to something much greater. The crescent moon mark on his ankle is the sign the ancient texts prophesied. The box you found with them contains more than mysterious symbols. It is a map to the sanctuary, and at the same time a key to awakening powers that the society has sought for centuries. But it can only be opened by the combination of blood from the 2 lineages, that of the seers and that of the guardians. Look for Helen Vanderbilt. She has dedicated her life to exposing the truth about the society. More importantly, she is my distant cousin. Though neither of us knew this until shortly before I left, trust her as you would trust me. Hidden in the false bottom of this letter, you will find an old key. It opens a door at St. Clair Monastery in the mountains. There Mother Sophia and the last true guardians await you. They have the answers you seek and can protect the children as they grow and develop their gifts. Edward, my love, I know this. There's a lot to process. But you have always been stronger than you realize. Your kind heart and unwavering integrity are the true weapons against the darkness that the society represents. Protect the twins. The sun was beginning to set when the van finally reached the gates of St. Clair Monastery, a centuries-old structure partially hidden by the vegetation of the Rocky Mountains. Edward still held Lillian's letter, now carefully folded close to his chest. Her final words echoed in his mind, along with all the revelations they had brought. Helen, who had remained in respectful silence after Edward read the letter, finally spoke. "Mother Sophia is expecting us. She is more than she appears to be." The old iron gates opened silently, as if they had been forewarned of their arrival. The stone path led to an inner courtyard surrounded by ancient arcades, where a figure in traditional robes awaited them. "Welcome to the last refuge," Mother Sophia said, with a voice that conveyed both authority and warmth. She was a woman of indeterminate age. She could have been 60 or 80, with eyes of such a deep blue that they seemed to contain oceans of wisdom. Upon seeing the babies, her face lit up with a smile. The twins of the prophecy. Finally. She approached with soft steps and gently touched each child's forehead. "And you, Edward Montgomery, the guardian chosen by Lillian." "You knew my wife," Edward stated, not a question. "I have known many generations of your family, both Lillian's and yours, Edward," Mother Sophia replied, guiding them through stone corridors lit by ancient oil lamps. "Come, we have much to discuss and little time. The society is moving faster than we anticipated." The group was led to a circular room in the monastery's highest tower. The walls were lined with shelves of ancient books, and in the center stood a round table carved with symbols similar to those on the mysterious box. "George, please take the children with the nanny to the room prepared for them," Mother Sophia instructed. "It is protected by ancient safeguards. They will be safe there." After the babies were taken away, Mother Sophia turned to Edward and Helen. "Lillian's letter must have answered some of your questions, but I also know it raised many more." "Why did Lillian never tell me?" Edward asked, the pain in his voice palpable. "To protect you," Mother Sophia replied gently, "and to protect the future she saw. Lillian possessed the most powerful gift of vision I have encountered in generations. She didn't just perceive truths and lies, she could glimpse future possibilities." Helen leaned forward, intrigued. "Is that how she found out about the twins?" "Yes," the mother confirmed. "Lillian saw that her removal would be necessary for everything to align properly. The society was watching her very closely. She needed to create a definitive distraction so we could prepare for the children's arrival." Edward felt his blood run cold. "Are you saying that Lillian, that she—" "Her illness was real, Edward," Mother Sophia clarified quickly, "but she chose not to fight it when she discovered her fate was intertwined with a greater possibility. Her final act was to ensure the society let their guard down, convinced their secret was safe. At that moment, an ancient bell rang 3 times, a deep sound that reverberated through the stone walls." Mother Sophia's face tensed. "They've arrived earlier than expected," she said, rising quickly. "Helen, take Edward and the box to the crypt. Follow the plan we discussed." "What plan? What are you talking about?" Edward demanded. Helen was already pulling him toward a hidden door behind one of the shelves. "We don't have time to explain now. The society is here and they've brought someone you know very well." "Who?" Edward asked as he followed Helen through a secret passage illuminated by phosphorescent crystals embedded in the walls. "Your head of security," Helen replied with regret. "George isn't who we thought he was. In fact, he's one of the society's top agents." Edward stopped abruptly. "But he's with the babies right now." An enigmatic smile appeared on Helen's face. "Exactly as Mother Sophia planned. Sometimes the best way to protect something is to let the enemy think they've captured it." The secret passage twisted downward in a seemingly endless spiral. The crystals in the walls pulsed with a soft light that shifted colors as they advanced, from blue to green, from green to gold. "What do you mean exactly as planned?" Edward asked, his voice echoing off the ancient walls. "We just left the children with someone who works for the society." Helen kept walking, her confident steps indicating familiarity with the path. "The babies George took are an illusion, created by Mother Sophia. It's one of the rarest gifts of the ancient guardians, the ability to create projections so real they can deceive even the most skeptical." "And where are the real babies?" "With the real nanny in a location even I don't know. Mother Sophia is the only one who knows all the details of the plan. It's safer this way." They arrived at a circular chamber, very similar to the tower room, but with one crucial difference in the center. Instead of a table, there was a crystal pedestal emitting its own light. "This is where we need the box," Helen explained. Edward removed the artifact from his bag, noticing how the symbols seemed to pulse in sync with the crystals in the chamber. As he brought it closer to the pedestal, the box began to vibrate softly. "What exactly is this place?" he asked, observing how the walls seemed to reflect fleeting images, like memories trying to materialize. "It's the Chamber of Echoes," familiar voice replied. Mother Sophia emerged from a side passage carrying an ancient book. Here, the original guardians stored not only knowledge but also living memories. "And George? The society?" Edward questioned. A serene smile appeared on the mother's face. "They are exactly where they need to be, following false leads that will keep them busy long enough for us to complete what needs to be done." Mother Sophia opened the book in her hands, revealing pages covered with the same symbols as the box. "Edward, have you ever wondered why Lillian chose you? Why, of all people, you were tasked with protecting the twins?" Edward looked at the box in his hands, remembering the moment he found the babies in the square. The letter said it was because of my integrity, my leadership skills. "Partially," Mother Sophia gently interrupted, "but there's more. Much more." "Helen, show him." The journalist removed a pendant from her neck, a silver circle with a crescent moon engraved, identical to the baby's birthmark. "Your family, Edward, has a history older than you can imagine," Helen explained. "This pendant belonged to your great-grandfather Thomas Montgomery. He was a guardian, just like his father before him." "Impossible," Edward protested. "My great-grandfather was an ordinary merchant. I have all the photos and documents." "Documents can be altered," Mother Sophia said. "Memories can be shielded. The society has worked for centuries to erase our true history. But blood, blood does not lie." She stepped closer to the pedestal, gesturing for Edward to place the box on it. "That is why you can touch the box without consequences. That is why babies calm in your arms. The blood of the guardians runs through your veins, just as it did in your ancestors." The moment the box touched the pedestal, something extraordinary happened. The symbols began to glow with their own light, casting dancing shadows on the walls of the chamber. The fleeting images on the walls started to take on a more defined shape. "These are memories," Helen whispered, awestruck. "Memories of the original guardians." Edward saw scenes unfolding before his eyes. People in ancient robes performing extraordinary feats, protecting sacred knowledge, guarding powerful secrets. And among them, familiar faces, including that of his great-grandfather, much younger but unmistakable. "The society doesn't know," Mother Sophia continued, "but the true power was never in the box or the babies. It's in the blood, in the lineage, in the union of ancient families. The twins are special not just because of their individual gifts, but because they represent the union of two powerful lineages, the seers like Lillian and the guardians like you." A sudden tremor shook the chamber, causing ancient dust to fall from the ceiling. Mother Sophia exchanged a meaningful look with Helen. "They've uncovered the illusion faster than we expected," the mother said. "It's time to show Edward the true purpose of this chamber. Helen, prepare the ritual. We must awaken the ancestral memory before the society finds this place." "What ritual?" Edward asked, watching Helen retrieve ritualistic objects from a hidden compartment in the wall. "The ritual your wife saw in her visions," Mother Sophia replied. "The one that will awaken not only your ancestral memories, but also your dormant gifts. Edward, you are not just a protector of the twins. You are the key to restoring the balance that was lost centuries ago." The Chamber of Echoes pulsed with an ancient energy as Helen arranged crystals in a circular pattern around the pedestal. Each crystal emitted a different frequency, creating an ethereal harmony that made the symbols on the box glow more intensely. "The ritual of the guardians hasn't been performed in over a century," Mother Sophia explained, flipping through the ancient book. "The last person to undergo it was your great-grandfather, Thomas." Edward watched the preparations with a mix of fascination and apprehension. "And what if I'm not worthy? What if it doesn't work?" "The blood doesn't lie, Edward," Helen replied, completing the circle of crystals. "Besides, you've already proven your worth by instinctively protecting the twins." Mother Sophia looked up from the book. Lillian knew this. In her visions, she saw you here at this moment. That's why she chose not to fight her illness. She knew her destiny was greater than her own life. A new tremor, stronger than the last, shook the chamber. Ancient dust danced in the light of the crystals. "They're getting closer," Helen warned. "We need to begin." Mother Sophia nodded and turned to Edward. "The ritual will awaken the memories and gifts that have been sealed within your lineage. It will be intense. You will see and feel things that defy modern understanding. Are you ready?" Edward thought of the babies, of Lillian, of all the revelations from the past few hours. "Yes," he replied with a firmness that surprised even himself. "Then step into the circle," the mother instructed. "And remember, do not fight the memories, let them flow." Edward positioned himself at the center of the crystal circle. Helen began to recite words in an ancient language, while Mother Sophia positioned the mysterious box on the pedestal, directly in front of him. The symbols on the box began to move, as if they were alive. The walls of the chamber reflected increasingly clear images, scenes from a distant past that began to connect with their own memories. "Close your eyes," Mother Sophia instructed, "and open your mind." Edward obeyed. The moment he closed his eyes, he was flooded by a cascade of memories that were not his, or rather, not his alone. He saw his great-grandfather Thomas in a similar ritual decades ago. He saw ancient guardians protecting sacred knowledge from dark forces. He saw the exact moment when the society became corrupted, transforming from protector to predator of ancient secrets. The memories flowed like a turbulent river in his mind. He saw the true history of his family, the sacrifices made to protect the ancient lineages. He understood why his father never spoke of the past. He himself had his memories, sealed to protect the future. And then, like a flash of clarity amidst the storm of memories, he saw Lillian, not as he had known her, but as she truly was, a seer of extraordinary power, who chose her own destiny to protect something greater. "Edward," Lillian's voice echoed in his mind, clear as if she were beside him, "there is something you need to see." In his vision, Lillian was in a sunlit garden holding the twins, older now, perhaps 5 or 6 years old. The girl had the same sharp eyes as her mother, while the boy played with a medallion identical to the one Helen carried. "This future is still possible," Lillian said in his vision, "but first you must accept who you truly are." Edward felt something awaken within him, an ancient power dormant for generations. Her senses expanded in ways she never believed possible. She could feel the energy of the crystals, the wisdom in the walls of the chamber, the presence of every person in the monastery. "It's working," Helen whispered, watching as the symbols from the box now floated in the air, forming intricate patterns around Edward. Mother Sophia smiled, satisfied. "The Guardian is awakening." Suddenly, Edward opened his eyes. They glowed, with an otherworldly golden hue, reflecting the power now coursing freely through his veins. Around him, the crystals pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. "I can feel them," he said in a voice that seemed to carry echoes of his ancestors. "The babies, they are—" A deafening roar interrupted his words. The walls of the chamber shook, more violently than before. "The society has found the main entrance to the temple," Mother Sophia announced, her voice urgent but controlled. "Edward, you now hold the power of the Guardians. Do you know what must be done?" Edward nodded, ancestral memories guiding his actions. "The babies are in the inner sanctuary, protected by ancient safeguards, but we must reach them before the society discovers the secret passage." "And George?" Helen asked, worried. An enigmatic smile appeared on Edward's face. "He is exactly where we need him to be. Lillian showed me. In her last vision, she saw this moment, and she saw how we could use his own betrayal against the society." The entire monastery vibrated with the energy of the impending confrontation. Edward, with his newly awakened senses, could perceive every movement within the ancient complex. The society's agents advancing through the upper corridors, George leading a group toward a false secret chamber, and, most importantly, the pulsating energy of the safeguards protecting the twins in the inner sanctuary. They've brought all their top leaders, he said, his new abilities allowing him to sense the presences above. Exactly as Lillian foresaw. Arrogance has always been the society's greatest weakness, Mother Sophia remarked, preparing for the next phase of the plan. They are so convinced of their superiority that they can't see when they're being manipulated. Helen consulted an antique pocket watch. We are at the exact moment your wife described in her visions, Edward. What happens now? Edward closed his eyes for a moment, accessing the ancestral memories now flowing freely in his mind. Lillian saw this moment from different angles, searching for the path that would lead to the best possible outcome. In her final vision, she discovered that the only way to defeat the society was to make them destroy themselves from within. A stronger tremor shook the chamber. Above them, they could hear the sound of ancient doors being opened. George is reaching the location where he thinks he'll find the babies, Edward continued. What he doesn't know is that Lillian planted specific evidence there, documents that reveal how the society has manipulated and betrayed its own members over the centuries. But why would George believe those documents? Helen asked. Because they were written with the blood of the seers, Mother Sophia explained. Lillian used her own gift to imbue the documents with true memories, memories that not even the society could completely erase. Edward approached the central pedestal, where the ancient box still pulsed with energy. The true function of this box is not to open some mystical portal or reveal supreme power, as the society believes. Its purpose is far more subtle and brilliant. It is an amplifier of truths. As if responding to his words, the symbols on the box began to glow more intensely. Edward could feel the energies of the monastery aligning, as if the entire place were a vast mechanism beginning to operate in harmony. George is finding the documents now, he said, his golden eyes focused on something only he could see. And he's not alone. The top leaders of the society are with him. Helen watched the floating symbols with fascination. What exactly do these documents reveal? The truth about how the society has sacrificed their own families for power, Mother Sophia replied. How they manipulated bloodlines, betrayed allies, and corrupted the sacred purpose of the Guardians. But most importantly, they reveal how they plan to use their own leaders as sacrifices in their final ritual. And the most interesting part, Edward added, a smile forming on his face, is that each leader will see a different truth in the documents, the specific truth about how they were betrayed by the others. Lillian ensured that each would see exactly what they needed to break the false alliances holding the society together. The sound of heated argument began to echo through the corridors above. Edward could feel the energy of the monastery shifting, the ancient safeguards responding to the growing chaos. It's beginning, he said. The society is tearing itself apart from within. Mother Sophia approached an ancient wall, pressing a sequence of symbols that caused a hidden passage to open. This is our chance. While they are busy with their own betrayals, we can reach the twins. And George, Helen asked, worried about the traitor who knew too much about them. Edward touched the ancient box, and his eyes shone more intensely. He just discovered that the society was responsible for the estrangement of his own family decades ago. Lillian left specific evidence for him, the truth about how his parents were manipulated and separated by the organization he served faithfully for years. The sound of arguing above them was turning into a more serious conflict. The energy of the monastery pulsed stronger, the ancient safeguards responding to the situation. Let's go, Mother Sophia urged. Lillian's plan is working perfectly, but we still need to reach the twins before the chaos up there reaches a critical point. Edward nodded, picking up the ancient box. The moment his fingers touched the artifact, all the symbols on the monastery walls began to glow in unison. The power of the Guardians flowed freely through his veins, guiding him through centuries of knowledge and responsibility. Lillian always knew this moment would come, he said, his voice carrying the weight of full understanding. Every move she made, every choice she took, was to bring us exactly to this point. Now finally, I understand why the twins needed a guardian who was both protector and witness, someone who could not only safeguard the ancient secrets, but also comprehend the true power of the truth. The secret passage led deeper into the heart of the monastery. Edward, now fully aware of his ancestral powers, guided the group through corridors that seemed to respond to his presence. The ancient walls glowed softly as they passed, as if the monastery itself recognized the return of a true guardian. "The inner sanctuary is just ahead," Mother Sophia announced, her voice echoing off the stone walls. "It is the most sacred and protected place in the entire monastery." Above them, chaos continued. Edward could feel the turbulent energies, the truths revealed by Lillian's documents, shattering centuries of lies and manipulations. "George is coming," he said suddenly, his heightened senses detecting the approach. "But he's different." Helen prepared for the confrontation, but Edward raised his hand in a calming gesture. "It won't be necessary. The truth Lillian left for him did exactly what it was supposed to." Moments later, George emerged from a side passage, his eyes red from recent tears. In his hands he trembled with a set of ancient documents. "They tore my family apart," he said, his voice choked. "They manipulated all of us for generations, and I served them faithfully." Edward approached his former head of security. "You were as much a victim as any of us, George. The society specialized in using our family ties against us. The leaders—" George hesitated. "They're turning on each other. Each has discovered a different betrayal. Each has seen how they were manipulated and used. The society is imploding." Mother Sophia nodded in satisfaction. "George is finding the documents now," he said, his golden eyes focused on something only he could see. "And he's not alone. The top leaders of the society are with him." Helen watched the floating symbols with fascination. "What exactly do these documents reveal?" "The truth about how the society has sacrificed their own families for power," Mother Sophia replied. "How they manipulated bloodlines, betrayed allies, and corrupted the sacred purpose of the Guardians. But most importantly, they reveal how they plan to use their own leaders as sacrifices in their final ritual. And the most interesting part," Edward added, a smile forming on his face, "is that each leader will see a different truth in the documents. The specific truth about how they were betrayed by the others. Lillian ensured that each would see exactly what they needed to break the false alliances holding the society together." The sound of heated argument began to echo through the corridors above. Edward could feel the energy of the monastery shifting, the ancient safeguards responding to the growing chaos. "It's beginning," he said. "The society is tearing itself apart from within." Mother Sophia approached an ancient wall, pressing a sequence of symbols that caused a hidden passage to open. "This is our chance. While they are busy with their own betrayals, we can reach the twins." "And George?" Helen asked, worried about the traitor who knew too much about them. Edward touched the ancient box, and his eyes shone more intensely. He just discovered that the society was responsible for the estrangement of his own family decades ago. Lillian left specific evidence for him, the truth about how his parents were manipulated and separated by the organization he served faithfully for years. The sound of arguing above them was turning into a more serious conflict. The energy of the monastery pulsed stronger, the ancient safeguards responding to the situation. "Let's go," Mother Sophia urged. "Lillian's plan is working perfectly, but we still need to reach the twins before the chaos up there reaches a critical point." Edward nodded, picking up the ancient box. The moment his fingers touched the artifact, all the symbols on the monastery walls began to glow in unison. The power of the Guardians flowed freely through his veins, guiding him through centuries of knowledge and responsibility. "Lillian always knew this moment would come," he said, his voice carrying the weight of full understanding. "Every move she made, every choice she took, was to bring us exactly to this point. Now, finally, I understand why the twins needed a guardian who was both protector and witness, someone who could not only safeguard the ancient secrets, but also comprehend the true power of the truth." The secret passage led deeper into the heart of the monastery. Edward, now fully aware of his ancestral powers, guided the group through corridors that seemed to respond to his presence. The ancient walls glowed softly as they passed, as if the monastery itself recognized the return of a true guardian. "The inner sanctuary is just ahead," Mother Sophia announced, her voice echoing off the stone walls. It is the most sacred and protected place in the entire monastery. Above them, the chaos continued. Edward could feel the turbulent energies, the truths revealed by Lillian's documents shattering centuries of lies and manipulations. "George is coming," he said suddenly, his heightened senses detecting the approach. "But he's different." Helen prepared for the confrontation, but Edward raised his hand in a calming gesture. "It won't be necessary. The truth Lillian left for him did exactly what it was supposed to." Moments later, George emerged from a side passage, his eyes red from recent tears. In his hands he trembled with a set of ancient documents. "They tore my family apart," he said, his voice choked. "They manipulated all of us for generations, and I served them faithfully." Edward approached his former head of security. "You were as much a victim as any of us, George. The society specialized in using our family ties against us." "The leaders—" George hesitated. "They're turning on each other. Each has discovered a different betrayal. Each has seen how they were manipulated and used. The society is imploding." Mother Sophia nodded in satisfaction. Lillian foresaw that the only way to destroy an organization built on lies was with pure truth, a truth even they couldn't deny or distort. They finally reached the inner sanctuary, a circular chamber of impressive proportions. In the center, protected by an ancient energy field, the twins slept peacefully in an ornate cradle. Edward approached, and the energy field dissipated naturally at his touch. As he cradled the babies in his arms, he felt a deep connection, not just the protective instinct he had always possessed, but something older and sacred. "What happens now?" Helen asked, watching as the babies nestled nature